So I'd like to clarify something from yesterday that I said, which was perhaps a little bit confusing. This was concerning the obtaining cause for the body in Bardo and also for Rupakaya, the form body. First of all, in terms of form body, since that's an easier thing to answer, the question was asked in terms of there's bodhicitta in Tantra, there's bodhicitta, and there's the illusory body, and how can you have two obtaining causes? And actually, both of them are part of the network of positive force, so you only have one obtaining cause. It's the network of positive force, or the so-called collection of merit, and the bodhicitta as a vow, as a non-revealing form, would be included in the network of positive force, collection of merit, and so would the illusory body. So you would have form things in there as well as these potentials. But in terms of what the text was saying and what Rinpoche was referring to, Bhava Viveka had said that the obtaining cause for the Bardo body was karma, and the cooperative condition was the disturbing mental factors. Well, Bhava Viveka was Madhyamaka. Svatantrika Madhyamaka, but Madhyamaka, and he wrote a commentary to Nagarjuna's root verses, and so he would uphold the Nagarjuna's view, which included the non-revealing forms, that for actions of body and speech, the karmic impulse was a form, a physical phenomenon. So then, when you look at the sources for Kedabje's and Gyaltsabje's discussions that follow in the text, Kedabje is writing a commentary to the 7 logic texts of Dinaga. The 7 logic texts are written from the point of view of Sautrantika and Chittamatra, and Kedabje is writing from the point of view, writing a commentary to Uttara Tantra. So Dinaga's logic texts are from Sautrantika and Chittamatra point of view. Uttara Tantra is by a Sangha, that's also from Chittamatra view. And so what both of them are trying to analyze is, if you take the view of those two tenet systems, which is that karma is exclusively the urging, so the mental factor in actions of body, speech, and mind, of all of them, then how do you get a revealing form, not a revealing form, an obtaining cause for the body in the Bardo and rebirth? So that was their discussion, and so the conclusion that they had was that I've forgotten which one said which, but the one that said that you have for the obtaining cause for the mind of the Bardo being, then it is a dormant factor. So dormant factor is, like I explained, it's a consciousness which is a way of being aware which is below the surface, like when we're asleep. And the person isn't aware, but the consciousness takes in the object. So it's that level that goes on into makes the connection. The textbooks that assert this type of under the surface type of dormant level of consciousness also explain how you have a continuity of bodhisattva, of bodhicitta, during the total absorption on voidness, how that continues. Otherwise, it's quite difficult to explain how, when you're totally absorbed on voidness and there's no appearance of anything, conventional, how do you have bodhicitta continue? So this is the explanation that's there. And then they assert, which is rather controversial, either it was Gyaltsab, I think it was Kedabje, but I may be wrong, I may be getting the two confused, was that the potential, which is from the karma, from the urging and from the action, that this is a non-congruent affecting factor in neither form nor way of knowing of something, and that when that gets activated, it can activate either as a way of knowing or as a form. So this is what is a little bit unusual, because how can a way of knowing something make a potential, and then that, when that potential gets activated, it's a form. But this seemed to be the only way to explain how that could possibly work in this version of karma, where karma is exclusively a way of knowing. So I hope that didn't freak out our German translator too much about that. So anyway, just to make it a little bit clearer, since I like things precise, and that actually is what Rinpoche explained. So, do you have questions?
The conclusion was...
Excuse me?
Maybe I just didn't get it, but you said the conclusion...
Speak into the microphone, please.
The conclusion of the cause for the mind is this dormant factor, right?
The obtaining cause would be
the mind of a Bardo being.
Right.
And
so that
body,
you have a consciousness, it goes under the surface, and then
yes,
it comes back up.
Yes. And what is the cause for the body of a Bardo being?
They say it is from the potential.
This is the potential. Okay.
The potential can then, when it gets activated, give rise to either, since it's neither a form nor way of being aware of something, can give rise to either a form or a way of being aware of something, so that you could imagine the type of debates that would follow from that. Also, by the way, I should clarify from yesterday the reason why everybody has been our mother. If one person has been our mother, then since everybody is equal, an infinite time and a finite number of sentient beings, then everybody has been our mother. And if that's the case, then if one person has not been our mother, then nobody has ever been our mother, because everybody is equal. That's the logic. Including our mother of this lifetime wasn't our mother. So that's a very prasangika way of arguing. The absurd conclusion.
I don't think this is... Oh, okay. How and why is everybody equal?
That's just the way things are. Everybody wants to be happy, nobody wants to be unhappy, so we're all equal in that sense. Why would anybody be different? I mean, all sentient beings are a continuum of aggregates, all the same.
But for that reason, everybody has to have been our mother?
If one person has been if given finite number of beings, infinite amount of time, so every possible relationship could happen during that, and happen over and over again. If there's infinite time, no beginning, no end, then, and everybody is equal, then if one has been our mother, everybody has been our mother because everybody is equal. And mathematically it's correct.
Equal in not wanting to suffer and wanting
Equal in
happiness?
having been our mother. If one person has been our mother, everybody's been our mother. If one person has killed us, everybody has killed us at some point, given infinite time. So we have been everything to everyone. That's why, there's this whole thing of, what was it? Some arhat or somebody a Buddha saw this pond and laughed because, the son was eating the mother that was reborn as the fish and so on. So that, I used to call it a story in English, and then the old Serkong Rinpoche scolded me heavily. It's not a story, it's history. You think it's made up, If Buddha and Nagarjuna and these people wanted to make up stories, they'd make up a much better one than that. Yes. And then he'd point out my arrogance. So, yes.
So this was concerning my question, because I had the same question about this story with Shariputra, where you have
Yes,
obviously
Shariputra, that's
have
right.
have this connection to all these beings which you meet again.
Right.
And then also in the Golden Light Sutra there is the Buddha, and he has this connection where he tells these stories, and where the Buddha always says, yeah, you were this in this life, and this previous life we had this connection, lives before we had this connection.
Yeah.
So this seems that like some beings have stronger connection than others.
Well, it's not that some beings have stronger connections than others. It's a matter of how recently the connections were there. How recent. And also the interaction, of course. If I just see a bird flying in the sky, that's different from, being married to somebody. A little bit different. A little bit different.
You said a finite amount of sentient beings.
Right. There's no more being created. It's not that, Buddha's creating beings.
Would it be correct that finite in the sense of not becoming more or less,
Right.
but still
But uncountable.
uncountable, but
Unless
still
you have
limitless?
tremendous patience and a lot of time.
That's right.
No, but uncountable is, that's countless eons. It's the largest, every progressive unit of 10 in the Indian counting system has a word. And the one that's the highest in that, it doesn't just continue like, the decimal places of pi, that the highest one is called countless. So do you take that literally? I don't know. I mean, it's the highest number. And, for many things, the reasoning is that, that's just the way it is. Which is, so be satisfied. Why does everybody want to be happy and nobody wants to be unhappy? Why? Feels good? Why does it feel good? I mean, it's just the way it is. plant grows toward light, not toward dark. Why? Yeah. So anyway, that's photosynthesis, and I will stop talking. Thank you. Next.
If children in school are shown this sign, and then the teacher, and they see this
He's making
sign,
the sign of the letter
a
Z
Z,
or Z.
in the beginning, they don't see a Z. No? And then the teacher tells them this is a Z.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, they see a Z.
Right?
How can that be?
How can that be? That is the... remember we spoke about categories? So now they have a category. Now there is a category, not the categories, because categories are static. They don't change. You can replace one category with another category, but they don't organically grow. So a static, and there's a lot of, a static, a category is actually nothing other than what it is. So it's static. But anyway, enough of that. Now they have a category of this, zigzag line. And so every time that they see it written differently, a different color, a different size, and so on, they fit it into that. And it has been designated with a word. It refers to, and that word is Z. And then there's a category of the sound of that, or Z in American English, that no matter what voice it's said in or how loud and so on, it's the same word. So conceptual cognition, it's perceived through the filter of the category. So you have the category, and then through the filter, then you cognize the object, that zigzag line. And so they fit it into the category that then is designated with a word, and the word arises dependently on a meaning. Otherwise, it's just sound. So it works like that.
But the physical appearance is still the same, no?
The physical appearance is, well, for a dog looking at it, the dog doesn't know what it is. Just sees a line. So it is not established as the letter Z or Z from its own side. It is conceptually labeled with a category and designated with a word. So that's dependent arising, but this is why I said first there is, just the line, and then the line together with fitting into the category.
Could you then say the Z is on the blackboard?
The Z is on the blackboard. Well, the line is on the blackboard. The line on the blackboard is conceptually, labeled with the Z, as being fitting in the category of a Z, and given the name Z. So that's the location. The blackboard is the location. So when you say there is the absence of a dog on the table. There's no dog on the table, so what is being negated is dog on the table as one unit. Not that there's no table. You're not negating the table. You're negating the dog on the table. So you have to, in negation phenomenon, which is a highly complex topic, you need to understand what is the object of negation, And the object of negation can include the location of the object.
So where is the Z?
Where is the Z? There's a line on the table, and in a sense, it's a mental construct.
Not just a name.
Well, the sound Z is a word, but it's only a name when it is mutually dependent with a meaning. Otherwise, it's just a sound.
Does it need a mental...
Speak into the microphone, please.
Does it need a mental image?
Does it need a mental image? No, not necessarily. It can be a mental sound. And we have, categories or concepts of emotions. That's not, that doesn't have a form. Like I was, used the example of the emotion of liking and the emotion of loving someone. Do we have a concept of that? Concept being a category. Concept being a category used in not just in logic, but in a cognition. So then it's a concept. Or we would say an idea of it, to put it in, much more colloquial language.
So you need a concept also to have a Z.
For it to be a Z, yes, there would have to be a concept of a Z.
The sound Z is not enough.
Well, okay, now a meaning category and an object category are the same. So those are two meanings of a term. So the meaning of a word is also the object that it refers to. Object not necessarily being a form. It could be an object, an emotion, for example.
Okay.
Right. But not everything has a name.
So how do you name
Somebody has to, they dig up something from the, the archaeologist 1,000 years from now, digging up this object. So now they have to give it a name. Or they discover a new star, so they give it, some long technical string of numbers as its name. The star is there before it's given a name.
But when they first dig up the object,
Pardon?
When they first dig up the object, they see an object.
They see an object, yes.
So that object is also labeled by a name, no?
Well, people have to make up the name. It's a convention. That's what the word convention means, that people make it up and use it as a convention. Somebody invents, this thing, and now they're going to call it as I said, you can call it a black rectangle, but you can also call it a cell phone or a mobile phone, or in Russian it's called mobilnik, which I love that term. Mobilnik. Sputnik, mobilnik. Very good.
But first time when they see that object,
They don't know what it is.
but still they see an object.
Well, you would give it the name. You would give it the name thing.
Okay.
Thing, object. And that's a convention, because what do you have there? A collection of atoms and the collection of subparticles and the field and so on. Where is the boundary? So even just being a thing is like putting a plastic casing around it. On this side it's not a thing and it's something else, and on the other side it's this.
So they see it because they label it thing.
Do you really want to go there?
Yes?
Because that is more the cognition theory that you have in the non-Gelugpas, which is a very, very different cognition theory. So I don't think we really want to have a full explanation of that and how that's different from the Gelugpa explanation of conceptual cognition.
Dr. Persin, could you explain again the difference? Oh, sorry. Could you explain again the difference between a mind and consciousness? In German,
Mind and consciousness. Mind. Well, I mean, first of all, these are Western words.
in German we say Bewusstsein.
Yeah, but mind would be a very general word that would include both consciousness and mental factors. So when you a consciousness, and there are 6 types of consciousness. Chittamatra has 8, but we'll just stick with 6. So there is eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness, depending on which sensorial equipment is involved. And that is objects, you can speak in terms of their essential nature, which is what type of phenomenon they are. And consciousness is aware of that. So, is it a sight? Is it a sound? Is it a smell, a taste, physical sensation, or a mental object? And then the attributes of it are known by the mental factors. And it's not just the attributes, but also either the attributes or the mechanics that are involved. These are the mental factors. The mechanics like, poking the consciousness to the object, or what was said, what was that last discussion that Rinpoche had? Rinpoche was explaining is this word which looks like it could be desire, but actually it translates the Sanskrit word for a wish. And it is the definition of the mental factor of intention, which is in every moment of cognition. So it is the wish to, and Vasubandhu explains it like this, the wish to be the agent of doing something, and the wish to, so, like with bodhicitta, you have 2 of these, the wish to benefit all beings and the wish to attain, enlightenment in order to be able to benefit them the best. So that's just a wish. And then the attachment is to, not let go if you have it. So it exaggerates the qualities. And then depending on which angle you're looking at, longing, desire, you don't have it and you want it. And attachment is you have it, you don't want to let go. And greed, even if you have it, you want more. So mind would be the general word that would include consciousness and the mental factors. And in Sautrantika and Chittamatra, it would also include this reflexive awareness, which is like the internal recording device, that their explanation of how memory works. Self-knowing, self, then you get confused with what in the world you mean by self. So in English, the word reflexive means turned back in, toward itself. Yeah.
There is also a question online, may I?
Length.
Yes, from the Zoom people. From online.
Oh, online.
Yes, yeah.
Hearing
I'm
aids.
sorry. Stefan is asking, how can we meditate against self-attachment? Very simple question.
How do we meditate as an opponent to self-attachment? Well, as Rinpoche was explaining, that when we have grasping for the self of person, let's say, to exist as some static thing. Here I am again in the morning, same as I was yesterday. So this type of thing, still I'm the same me. That what you are doing is, Simon used the word superimposing, so interpolating means adding something that's not there. So we are adding the, that it's self-established, let's say, or that it's permanent, unchanging, or whatever. And to realize that that doesn't refer to anything real. It's not clinging onto literally something holding it up in reality. So then you use the, various lines of reasoning to prove that, there can't be something behind it holding it up. So it's merely a mental construct. So then you have this differentiation between the conventional, what it is it a person or, whatever it is, and does it truly exist? So that it's a person, that's valid. That it truly exists, it's not valid, and that's quite unique to Tsongkhapa's explanation. But the thing is that these two are inseparable, and because they're inseparable, the other Tibetan traditions would say you can't possibly divide it and say one aspect is valid and the other isn't. So their position makes perfect sense as well. But that's how you would go about opposing it. Is she?
So I have a question about the text. In the second verse, it said, after consciousness has entered. And in the fourth verse it says, then
Wait a
independence.
Second, let me find it.
Yeah, on page 4.
Wow. I have my own translation, so.
Maybe that helps.
Right.
So in the second verse, it says, after consciousness has entered.
Yeah.
And in the fourth verse, it says, therefore, independence of name and form, consciousness arises.
Yeah.
And now I wonder if consciousness enters and then name and form occur, how then independence of name and form, consciousness arises again? Is it then like the consciousness, the I consciousness, or like, yeah, I have my different ways of thinking about it, but maybe you can give me
Well,
insights.
yes, according to the commentaries, it is the sensory consciousness, is nameable mental faculties, and form. Well, I mean, that's referring to the eye consciousness or ear consciousness and so on. So, in other words, when the mental consciousness, or, however you want to, it's usually mental consciousness in the sutra system, goes on into future, into bardo, into lifetime. It's not differentiated yet into eye consciousness, ear consciousness, and so on. It's only when the form, the body, the embryo develops to the point in which you have the sense. When you talk about the eye sensors, it's not eye power. I mean, it's talking about the physical basis. So the photosensitive cells of eyes and sound sensitive of the ears, once they develop, then on that basis you could have eye consciousness and so on. So consciousness would be differentiated. So those are the two types of why one consciousness in verse 2 and another consciousness in verse 4.
And so there's consciousnesses that are basing on our form and the body. And then I wonder, knowing kind of a lot about all those senses, I wonder, aren't they all in the end accumulate in the mental consciousness, or is it then the mind? Like, why do we have 5 different consciousnesses and the mental consciousness? Why don't we have our senses and they are sensed by the consciousness?
Well, that's a very good question, because what you're asking really is why the Buddhists differentiate consciousness, different types of consciousness for different types of objects, whereas the West just speaks of consciousness and it's included, with all objects. And I think it is, now this is purely a guess, but to emphasize the conditions that you need. So, for instance, somebody who has no eyes, either they're blind or their eyes have been plucked out. Do they have eye consciousness? So to emphasize the what's called the dominating condition, which is the cognitive, the sensors, sensorial equipment, and the importance of that, the necessity of that, then you have to posit the different types of consciousness. And actually, Rinpoche is saying I'm becoming a Vaibhashika because I've been studying so much the Vasubandhu. But there you have very different explanation, which is very much like the Western one. It's amazingly like the Western one, that actually the object, form, and the sensors, they meet. And you'd have to say that the eye sees the object, and then on the basis of that, consciousness connects with it, and consciousness knows it, but doesn't see it. And so that's like our Western explanation, that the light hits the eyes, the retina, so the eye sees it. Then it's changed into electric impulses and, all sorts of things. And then the brain knows it, but the brain doesn't see it. So it is, even another reason why you would have to differentiate, eye consciousness and ear consciousness and so on. The importance of the sensorial equipment. Also, in many ways, Buddhism tends to analyze, much more in detail than many of our Western conceptual frameworks, or it analyzes from a different point of view. So, yes?
My question is concerning practice and meditation, about the object of refutation. For the other schools like this, what is the difference when we search for it? The self-sustaining, self-sufficient, substantially existing self. The other school, I don't know what your terms are. That's how we used to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And the inherent existent selves of the Madhyamika Prasangika. So what is
Right.
the difference when searching for the self?
Substantially existent, self-sufficient self means that substantially existent means that it performs a function from its own side, and it can be known, and self-sufficiently means it can be known by itself. So I simplified that and said that a self that can be known by itself without something relying or being tied to something else. And so Vaibhashika says that the self can be known by itself, even though it is tied to the aggregates, that it, is standing out, on top of them. So, and it covers them. So it can be known, without knowing the other one simultaneously, without knowing the aggregates simultaneously. So that is the doctrinally, the non-Hindus would say that, the non-Buddhists would say that as well. And then the subtle object to be refuted in terms of how the self, so that's the gross. The gross is that it is static, partless, one, so partless, and can exist independently when it is liberated. But once you've refuted that, still, like the Vaibhashikas refute that, they're still left with that it can be known by itself. And then the subtle selflessness of persons is that, no, it can't be known by itself. First you perceive the aggregates, and then you perceive the aggregates and the self simultaneously. Now, on top of that, you have the voidness of all phenomenon. So then it's not self-established. Even if it is, so this is why I was saying you have to see what's left over. So, okay, what's left over? We have a self that is changing all the time, it has parts, can't exist independently of the aggregates, can't be known separately from the aggregates, but still there's something on the side. Its defining characteristic can be found inside the mental consciousness, and it has the power to establish that it's there. Because to know the self, you'd have to also know the mind. Then now you point to the mind that's me. So that's what's left over. So when you refute from the prasangika point of view, self-established existence, you're refuting what's left over after you've refuted all this other stuff. So this is why it's very important to go through the tenets, because if you haven't, approached the whole object of refutation in terms of what's left over progressively when you have refuted other levels and you just, refute the whole thing, it becomes trivial. I make it into silly, you search for the self. Is it up your nose? It is under your arm? Where is it? So what? You can't find it. And you're left with a big so what? Of course you can't find it. That doesn't help with anything. So it doesn't have the you don't have the understanding of what it is that they say you can't find. You can't find the self-establishing factor. I mean, it has a self-nature, otherwise you can't differentiate something from something else. But it doesn't have the power to it has a defining characteristic, otherwise you couldn't distinguish it from anything. But that doesn't have the power by itself or in conjunction with mental labeling to establish that it exists. Not that it makes it exist. That's non-Galupas would say that. That the Galupas would say, and make it exist just in terms of a thing. Still functions, they say, but into a thing. That's a concept. Because things don't, there are no things because there are no boundaries. Plastic, encapsulating of things. There's no things. Nevertheless, everything functions. So they're perfectly reasonable. So it's very important to negate, step by step by step.
I think I didn't really get it. I always thought the Prasangika Madhyamika have even a more subtle.
That is the more subtle.
So I didn't get the difference between the other schools and because
the other schools being the Indian ones or the
no, not Buddhist.
The Indian one, the two. Yeah,
like
but I mean
the
Indian
systems,
tenet systems.
Tenet systems, yeah.
Right.
Because I didn't get that.
Well, it can't be
difference.
known by itself, versus it is not. There's nothing on its side that has the power to establish that it exists. A little battery inside it, or something that, or something that's inside it that is generating a force field around it. Like around a starship that is, protecting it from what's outside. Excuse me, I'm a Trekkie. So, a force field, and then it encapsulates it in plastic. So there's nothing on the side of the object that you can find that's doing that has the power into making it a thing. That's what it's saying. But even with, and where the others are saying, yes, there's something on the side there, but it can't be known without knowing, the basis. That's their subtle. I mean, it's not that it's the other schools. This is in terms of the self. You're asking about the person. It's only, in regard to the person. And then that is extrapolated, in other words, extended to all phenomenon. They can't be known independently of a basis. Whole and parts is now taken as the basis. A whole is imputed on, is tied to parts. And you can see, according to Gelugpa way of looking at it, when you see the part, you can also see the whole. But how does that work? Then the other tenet systems would say the defining characteristic of the whole is also on the side of the part. So the part has the defining characteristic of both the part and the whole. So then it gets very complicated, because how many parts do you have and how many defining characteristics? And you can have quite a debate about that. How is it that I only see the front of you, I don't see the back of you, but you don't exist just as a front? I'm seeing your body. Well, I'm not really seeing your body, or am I? So we say that we're seeing the body, but we don't see, the backside.
But anyway, I mean...
That's why it becomes very, very interesting when you are visualizing, and visualizing yourself with four faces, going around, the back of your head. That becomes very interesting to do that.
But in a way, we designate everything. It's
What
not,
does it look like?
it's not that we designate everything, because this is we have to designate. It's a construct.
Well, yes, that we have to designate with words in order to communicate.
No, I mean also
Well,
like
or
how...
with signs, you know,
Yeah.
the dogs, the animals communicate with signs. You know, the tail wagging, or I mean, there's certain, or with smells, pheromones.
I mean, like because the most subtle dependent arising is the merely labeled one. I mean, I don't know the other term, your terms.
Yes, yes.
So I think everything is merely labeled. So no matter if I see the back or the front, I make my own construct of it.
Well, merely labeled means that, well, again, you're taking it as the non-galupas are taking it that way, that objects are merely constructs, because we only perceive a sight, and it's a construct to put it together as a whole object with all the other sensory perceptions, and we only see one moment at a time. So something that continues over time and has all the sensory things, well, that's a construct. Because you can never perceive that. You only perceive one moment and one type of sensory information. So that is a reasonable position. But then Tsongkhapa says, well, I mean, you can't be so freaky, if I can use that word, to contradict normal, conventional, common sense. And so, the worldly objects, I like to refer to that as common sense objects. Just common sense objects, it does have a physical sensation, this table, so I can bang into it and hurt my foot. I'm only seeing it, but a common sense object is a table that has all these, different aspects to it. So but how do you prove, how do you establish that there is such a thing as table? Table is with a word, which is made up. People made up, ancient times, put together these meaningless sounds, table, Tafel, in German, and gave it a meaning. We'll call this thing that, which is an amazing idea, if you think about it, how language evolved. And all you can say is that, a table, because the thing is, well, what is a thing? A thing is merely what the word thing refers to. That also is a thing is a concept as well, is a construct as well. So it is what it refers to. That's the only thing that you can say that demonstrates, we have words for things and they refer to things. And that's how you establish that there are things. It doesn't create things from a Kalapa point of view.
Thank you.
We have to think about this. This is not, that has to really sink in. You have to chew on that. I think the initial thing is to stop thinking in terms of how things exist and think in terms of how do you establish, the things exist. Dembar drupa. Drupa means to establish. It's not dembar yuba, to exist. So again, you have to milk the meaning out of the words. Okay. It's 5:30. but we can go on for a few more minutes.
Shall we?
Why not? I mean, if you have more questions, I mean, we have another session in the evening, but one question over there. We can do one last question. Ultima pregunta. Not you. But anyway, so then we'll have two last questions. We'll have two last questions. You can wait. Okay. Yes.
What's the Sanskrit word?
Speak into the microphone, please.
What's the Sanskrit word for mind?
What is the title?
Sanskrit.
Word. Sanskrit word. Chitta.
Chitta. And for consciousness?
Consciousness, vijnana.
Okay. Then,
So
Sometimes we hear mind and mental factors, chitta chaitasika. So chitta there is used for vijnana. I mean, unfortunately, words are sometimes used with several different meanings. Welcome to Sanskrit language and Buddhism.
big problem.
Well, not if you, I mean, our words, have multiple meanings. So why shouldn't that be the case with Tibetan and Sanskrit? Bear in English has several meanings. Yeah.
My question is, so we're mainly talking about the tenets regarding sutra level.
Yes.
Do the different tenets have different interpretations of tantras, or is it somehow tantra a complete new tenet?
Well, let's put it a different way. What they say is that you could practice Tantra with a Chittamatra view. So, I mean, the method that you're practicing is the same, but you couldn't get beyond a certain stage. On the complete stage, I think it is isolated mind. That once you reach that stage, automatically you would realize the Prasangika point of view. That's the way that it is explained. And also, in terms of, if you ask a question, could an academic, university professor, non-Buddhist, understand the Buddhist view of voidness? Yes. They would never be able to get non-conceptual cognition because they don't build up the positive force, the first zillion eons of positive force. So it could never be non-conceptual, but conceptually they could have an accurate understanding of voidness. Valid cognition. Conceptual.
An inferential realization.
The conceptual in that case is inferential cognition. By logic, they could validly, through logic, understand the refutation, which is voidness, correctly. Why not? Why not?
At what point does fear...
Microphone? Last question has degenerated. So we have multiple meanings of the word last question.
At what point does fear arise?
At what point does fear arise?
Mm-hmm.
With grasping to a self.
I mean,
then you're afraid for your, for me, or you could be afraid for somebody else, for your children.
No, but when you have...
That's mine, grasping for mine, my children. not your children.
Okay. When you have inferential realization of the emptiness or direct realization of emptiness?
There is a difference between prasangika cognition theory and non-prasangika cognition theory. So in non-prasangikas, the conceptual is inferential cognition. So inferential cognition means that it relies on line of reasoning. And the line of reasoning involves set theory, basically, which is categories. And it is, the syllogism is basically set theory, and logic. So that's conceptual. And then, and relying on that line of reasoning, then you have inferential cognition, which is conceptual. And in the non-prasangika view of, there it's called bare cognition. Bare cognition is bare of a category. So it is, without the category. So it's bare in that sense. In prasangika, you would have to call it straightforward cognition, is how I translate it. It's the same word in Tibetan or Sanskrit, but to make a difference, because that can be conceptual or non-conceptual. So there it's defined as a cognition, and a valid cognition that arises without relying on a line of reasoning. And so either it can be still with a category or not with a, without a category, conceptual or non-conceptual. And then, as Rinpoche pointed out to me, which I didn't really know before, that when it relies on a line of reasoning, that is cognizing something which is slightly obscure. Once it goes into straightforward cognition, that it is not relying on the line of reasoning, but it's still conceptual through a category, it now is something which is obvious, not obscured. So it's an obvious thing to you, but you're still through the category. So that makes a difference, and then either with the category, without the category. So like that. Stimmt. All right. So let's end for dinner, and we'll continue.
Bosaji Pagi Chukshi Metotam Rirab Lingshi Nede Gembadi Sangye Shingdu Migde Uwagi Rukun Namdak Shingla Juba Shogi Dam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamni Yatayami Sangjub Semjog Rinpoche Magye Banam Gigyochi Geba Nyamba Mebayang Gone Gongdu Bewa Shu